Hello, everybody. Welcome to Your Bread and Butter podcast. I'm Ryan Cummings.
And I'm Andrew Beaudry. Today, we're going to be talking about Made in America. Not the movie with Ted Danson and Whoopi Goldberg, but the reality show of what it really means to be made in America.
So when we're looking at the economy today, do you know why economists and meteorologists are often alike?
No clue.
Because they can be wrong more than 50% of the time and still have a job.
All right. See you soon.
Discussions in this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a registered broker-dealer. Member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors Incorporated, a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and Private Financial Design LLC are not affiliated.
Bread and butter.
Welcome back, everybody. We're really glad you're here for our podcast today, talking about Made in America, not the movie, but the reality show that we're in right now. So Made in America actually has a new meaning in this world and day and age today. So we're talking about it because we are focused in our economy right now that Made in America is becoming something that is real once again.
I think it's something that's been talked about a lot this year with a lot of the political environment. We'll dive more into those specifics in a little bit, but it really, kind of the origin of that desire of Made in America dates all the way back to the Revolutionary War and kind of this, homespun movement of doing things here. It kind of symbolized, resistance to the British economic control, no taxation without representation.
The Tea Party. Yeah.
Yes. All those things we learn about in history class, it's kind of still bleeds through into our country, even here today. And so there's this kind of modern resurgence driven by a lot of bipartisan support for, reshoring a lot of economic and industrial development back into the U.S. to help with that boon in our economy and kind of reindustrialize our nation as a whole to provide more security and ultimately additional economic growth.
Yeah, and I think actually after the World War II ended, we began to expand American influence by helping to rebuild Europe, helping to rebuild some of Asia. That was all destroyed by the wars. But in more current contemporary terms, we're going to get into where we're at. The truth is, starting back in 2018, we began to see this development of American companies being able to come back without having to repatriate their money and pay double taxation on it by bringing their money back. And that included going into the COVID era. Now, when COVID hit, what happened during COVID is that America found a way to stay open again. We got on this warp factor thing on the vaccinations. Whether you agree or disagree about vaccinations, it actually helped keep the factories and operations running in the United States, which allowed other countries to come here later on when they realized COVID was over, wanted to come to a country that could make things happen. So we've seen this build up. And then even after COVID, the Biden administration continued that, and we've had this buildup of billions and billions of dollars of money, really since 2020, of money coming into America. Currently, we have a little bit of a change in that with the new administration, so let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we've had I think really on both sides of the parties here, different legislation and different goals to really have that drive towards bringing industry back to America. We saw a lot of tax incentives on both sides, even in Biden's term and as well as with Trump's too, tax incentives for businesses to encourage domestic factory construction. So giving these businesses whether it's discounts on tax rates or in the case of some of Biden's policies, incentives or grants and whatnot to bring back microchip producing and whatnot to the U.S. So there's been tax incentives kind of in both parties to try to encourage some of this continued construction, but also even on the the maybe more of the negative reinforcement side. That's more positive reinforcement. On the negative, even things like penalties, like different tariffs, for example. It's kind of the going common content going on in the news right now talking about the tariffs and penalizing companies for offshoring some of this manufacturing. So it's kind of working a little bit of both ways, some positive reinforcement, some negative reinforcement, but the end goal being businesses coming back to America.
Right. So here we are. We're in January. The Patriots are still in the playoff hunt. Yeah. So, yeah, okay, you can be hating on me all you want. That's fine. I'm a Patriots fan. What can I say? So when we start talking about this, here we are at the beginning of the year, and we're already looking at where the economy is going to go. There are a lot of changes that have taken place, and way back in November, there were some removals of some of the tariffs because it was affecting the pricing of consumer products so much that the voting population said, hey, this is getting too painful,
right.
So they had to back off on it. Even though the mantra was that these tariffs aren't going to add any money to consumer costs, and we're making so much money, we're just going to give checks to everybody, all that stuff. Just, it's almost, smoke and mirrors. But what's really true is in the grocery store. So you begin to look and see, well, how is this strategy going to work? So there's a strong push in the AI sector,
Yes.
semiconductors, shipbuilding, pharmaceuticals. And we're going to talk a little bit today about where the money's coming from for these major companies investing in the United States, and we'll discuss it. So take it from there.
Yeah, you can see on this chart here some of the major companies that are putting significant investment into U.S. manufacturing, looking to build more factories, more locations, expand their business. You can see some of the biggest ones: Apple, NVIDIA, Micron, IBM, and even some others too: Hyundai, Amazon, etc. In the case of the smallest one on this list, GE Verona, which is $600 million in reinvestment, all the way to the top end of Apple, $600 billion in investment in U.S. manufacturing.
And when they're doing this, they're talking about building new factories. They're talking about hiring more workers. Now, prior to this little screen coming up that we just showed you on a chart, we've already had major companies like Samsung that have already, started spending billions of dollars. You had BMW opening up new plants. Micron's commitment, which we saw on that screen, already began back in 2023. The Microchip and Security Act got passed, and they immediately started investing into the economy. Which, by the way, a lot of the things we've done with the Building Back Better, with the infrastructure being repaired in the United States, and for those of us that have plenty of road work going on around us and bridge work and all that kind of stuff, that's all good, because you really do need to work on infrastructure. You let it go, bridges collapse, things fail. But there's a bipartisan support for us developing a very strong microchip industry, whereas not as dependent on other countries for producing this. So let's talk, and we're going to go down here. We're going to talk about each one of the companies and what they're doing.
Yeah, we've seen kind of the big areas of focus being microchips, like you were just saying, pharmaceuticals, EVs. So companies like Apple, NVIDIA, AstraZeneca, Hyundai, all kind of pushing in these different spaces to expand. In a lot of it's centered around a lot of the AI push. I mean, NVIDIA is manufacturing its most advanced AI chips here domestically in the U.S., the Blackwell platform, and entirely here domestically. So that's I think a big shift to bring what was, say, more so focused in Taiwan and in China, relying on a lot of their microchips, bringing it back here to the U.S.
And so now we have in front of us a very, very strong need for more utility, more electricity to power up these AI factories that need a lot of power. So on that note, you've got people talking about on mothballing, nuclear facilities. You've got a couple nuclear facilities that are being built that are out there, and whether you want nuclear energy or not, it's coming to some of these data centers that need all this electricity. It also is causing some of the consumer costs to go up, but we'll talk about that another time. But NVIDIA in particular is really a good story, but they're also limiting the chips that go out to China and Russia so that they can protect the integrity and the safety and the security of the country, which I think it's bipartisan support. It would have to be.
Right.
So there's got to be sectors that are going to advance, whether it's chips, data centers, and even shipbuilding could be a really big part of this process as we begin to actually start sending goods out of the country.
Right. So if you look at this chart, the number of data centers that's centered around this whole AI boom here in the U.S., I mean, we're significantly outperforming. Even when you look at the next 9 countries combined, we're producing more data centers. And again, if you keep up with the news at all, you probably have seen some of this news on it of, like you were saying, the strain that this is putting on the electrical grid here in the U.S., driving prices up, but also the potential for an AI boom. We're seeing this kind of crazy investment into this space, which is, a little reminiscent of the .com bubble, back in 2001. And so not to try to play, fortune teller here, because again, back to my beginning statement, if you try to get, guess about these things, you're going to be wrong most of the time, but it's got some reminiscent features.
Yeah, it is. And I remember that era. I mean, everybody wanted to get into internet stocks, and I had clients calling me, I want to buy this stock called e-toys. I want to buy this stock called e-cars. I want to buy this stock for e-this, e-that, e-that. Oh my goodness. And there was so much money lost in that era because it really hadn't been a vetted type of, not that the internet was bad or anything, but everybody thought they could, buy ice cream on the internet. It was just one of those crazy invested areas. Now, will AI be that way? I don't know. But all I do know is it's not a profit center yet. And so we have to be a little cautious about all this. It's great for the money to be spent, great for all of these things, but we really do need a better power grid, which also leads to an economic resurgence in construction. And on top of that, I'm going to say this, but solar has been providing roughly about 30% or so of the energy that is consumed in our country. And really, once it gets built, that's a free renewable energy source, unless you're in New England, which has got a lot more cloud cover than some other places. But, when you're providing 30% of the national power grid, I have a belief that this will not be an abandoned feature. Wind may go away, but really, the cleanest energy sources, sun, water. The problem with water is we don't have enough rivers in our country. And of course, Canada has been offering, particularly for New England, to, supply some of that power to us. And so hopefully there'll be some political will to work within that. But everything about this talks about growth and it talks about expansion. And this is the direction we're going. It's going to be working, and we just got to find and make it work.
It is. And, with that whole AI space, like you said, it's maybe not a profit center yet, and it very well could be, and I think that, in some of the research I've been doing on it, it does seem to be that, there are some of these companies that, could very well follow the path of the .com bubble. Now, the big companies that are investing in AI, I'm not saying that AI, I think, is going to be this kind of false technology that results in a bubble across the board. It's going to be, I just think we have, too much maybe saturation in that market with some of these smaller companies that aren't going to be able to keep up with the big guys. And that's maybe where the bubble aspect exists, not in the sector itself, but within maybe the oversaturation in the sector. But that being said, I mean, it's all this AI reshoring and bringing it back to the U.S. is I think a big potential for growth. And you got companies like Caterpillar, GE Verona, Siemens Energy. They're all benefiting. These are companies that maybe aren't necessarily traditionally thought of as a tech company or AI based company that are all getting into this space. So we're seeing it from many different avenues of people expanding on this sort of technology.
And as I was reading through and researching this time that we're doing this for you folks, I discovered in this whole shipbuilding thing an idea that we've not really had. Well, first of all, we've not had a lot of that going on in our country because we've leased out so many other ships and the arrangements that we've made. But then on the other hand, we're beginning to see that development here in our country. So this is an important aspect, that there's a lot of ancillary businesses that are going to benefit by this reshoring of our industries.
It is. And one other industry that we're also looking at, other than just the AI, is also pharmaceuticals. Kind of a big shift in reshoring a lot of that production back here to the U.S. I mean, China supplies 70% of global antibiotics and API exports.
And I have to tell you, that's a scary number to me.
It is.
70% of our pharmaceuticals, Americans depend on coming from one country. That is an alarming number.
Yeah, and so it's I think it's all the more incentive to try to have domestically here a little more independence. And I think COVID-19 did expose a lot of that dependence on foreign drug supply chains, slowing things down and slowing imports down into the U.S. And so we've seen a big push to have a lot of that come back here.
95% of U.S. ibuprofen comes from China. 95%.
This is, again, another alarming number, another big number that's I think we don't want to see.
Now Large Pharma is investing heavily in the United States facilities due to the incentives, both on the business structure as well as just internal for what they can do here. American workers are still the best workers in the world, and you just have to pay them a good wage so that they can survive.
They're not the cheapest workers, but they do great work.
No.
And then we're also looking at some additional reindustrialization. A lot of these industries that we're seeing, whether it's the AI, whether it's a need for more energy, computer chips, microchips, etc., this is also leading to some ancillary expansion in the industrialization here in the U.S. Looking to reshore different national security sectors and, again, reshore the computer chips, AI, biotech, all those sorts of areas, or looking at reshoring, expecting to continue for years, as we continue to see more and more policy out of the not only president, but Congress, Senate, et cetera, that's all bipartisan, that's supporting, reshoring of a lot of these.
Well, I think development of new products and new ideas. I mean, in the last century, you know what was the most useful invention that was ever invented in our country over the last 50 years?
I don't know.
Well, it would be a dry erase chalkboard because it was remarkable.
That is a good point.
Well, seriously, though, the United States has always been a powerhouse when it comes to innovation and invention. And part of that, too, and I'm going to throw that in there, is immigration. Being able to bring in these trained scientists, mathematicians, engineers, people that can function within that environment so that we can build new products and develop new things. This is a really big deal as far as it comes to us. So when we talk about reshoring and bringing in, it's not like the United States is going to become, again, this big, huge manufacturing powerhouse.
Right. I don't think we can compete with as we were already alluding to, the cost of manufacturing that a lot of other countries can do just simply cheaper than us here domestically. So it's going to be on some of these more groundbreaking technologies. It's going to be on the national security side of things. It's going to be all these other areas that are going to be the focus for what does reshore to us. And then from there, it's going to allow us to, hopefully generate more from those areas and then still leverage some of the basic manufacturing, from other countries like we've done successfully already.
Yeah, back in 2022, 2023, when Samsung first announced they were going to go into Austin, Texas and build a new facility there, one of the things that the Samsung CEO said in his interview for why they were doing this in Austin was he said, well, number one, first of all, American workers are superior in their work. He says, in our own home country, 69% of the chips that are made work. That leaves 31% that don't. In America, when you use an American chip, 93% work. You have a 7% failure rate. He said, so American workers by far. Now, even though American workers are the most expensive workers in the world, his response was, it gets the job done.
Right.
And that's really more important. What's good is having a refrigerator out there that somebody brings home and it doesn't work because the chip is bad. And then that's just all kinds of customer service problems. So I think that there's a industry revolution that's going to occur. I don't know if it'll be like the Industrial Revolution, but it's going to be something that has a major impact on our country, at least over the next 20, 25 years for the next generation. And what we do with that and how we deal with that is very important. But I can't stress enough the ability to bring in the best minds, the brightest minds, people that are willing to work, that are going to apply some of these factors to our country.
Yeah, so I think to kind of sum up some of the message of today is that we're, looking at, yes, some expansion and some positive direction in some of these sectors in America. And I think we just need to have the policy here within the country continuing to foster that sort of expansion, to be able to continue to, encourage investment in it, encourage expansion in it, whether it's through tax incentives and, less roadblocks, but more paths, more avenues to growth in these different areas to continue to see our country expand and not try to have this, I think, kind of pie in the sky vision of, well, we need to get back to these things that we were dominant in years ago, because, the ship has kind of sailed on some of those areas, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it.
Well, actually, I had a business once where I was making sailboats in my attic, and my sales went right through the roof. It was amazing. In all truth, we hope that this economy makes a difference. It won't really for those people that aren't willing to work in it. Like, you have to be able to be willing to work. And for all of those who might listen and say, well, AI is just going to take away my job. Well, it doesn't have to. And you can always find a way to work within the AI system. There's going to be plenty of jobs within the AI system.
Right.
And naturally, the fear is that nobody's going to work. Well, if nobody's worked, there's going to be no money generated to provide any kind of economy. So that's not going to happen. What is going to happen, for those who are willing to be flexible and willing to look at it in a different way, there will be opportunity. And I think as a country goes, we innovate, we make things happen, and we pioneer in areas that other people haven't. I mean, what are your thoughts on people who have fears about losing their jobs because of AI?
Yeah, I think, like you said, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, is there may be some jobs that AI replaces. Actually, we're looking at a lot of those jobs, though, primarily being your entry-level type of positions. That's where we're seeing it the most, and where I think we're likely to see it the most. So it's not like we're seeing, these vast industries just being completely replaced by AI. It's a lot of office positions where instead of hiring maybe an administrator or a young college kid to come and push paperwork and administratively task things to get done, those are a lot of the tasks that AI is replacing. But to your point, I think we're seeing that those jobs maybe are being replaced, but if you're someone who can begin to build your knowledge base on AI and learn how to work with it, because AI isn't smart enough, at least not yet, to fully teach itself. And so you need people that, and even actually when we attended that conference earlier this year and we're discussing AI in it, ultimately, even if you are using AI, there's still a human component for checks and balances. It gets things wrong. So they called it this 20-60-20 rule, where you, the human, do 20% of the work to start. You let AI do 60%, and you finish it up and correct it and clean it up at the other 20% on the back end. So long story short is, even with AI taking up some responsibility, it's not taking all of these different jobs and positions, at least not yet. And it's something that, if you build a knowledge base around that, well, you can, I think, find yourself a job doing just that.
Yes, this episode really is twofold. One, for those of you that are invested in the stock market and have an interest in, where is this economy going and where should I put my money and how do I balance diversification without having that, huge amount of risk. Well, this is about that. I mean, there is a positive side to this reindustrialization as we're seeing it. It could morph into something that is completely amazing and just so helpful for our economy and for our people. The second side of this, though, is for those of you out there who might be young enough to make a difference in your life by beginning to capture the knowledge and to put yourself in a position where you'll succeed no matter what. Now, so if you're fearful about, computers taking away your job and you're 18 years old, maybe you think about, really taking serious studying in areas like computer engineering, or even those of you out there that are willing to use your hands, vocational employment in all of the building industries, whether it be plumbing, electric work, contracting, practical hands-on work. Is always going to be plenty of jobs for that. And there's completely nothing wrong with having a life where you do that. The real thing about that, though, is that every one of those things I would mention all require an education.
They do, yep.
Granted, you can go work at McDonald's and you can do all these other things, but if you acquire a skill set that is practical and useful, then that helps you with your future and where you're going. We can talk all day about how this affects the market, but if you don't have a career where money's coming in, stock market means nothing to you.
Exactly,
so
yeah.
there's a little bit of a push there for you to open up your horizons.
Yeah, I think it's definitely the next big space to look at. For a while it was computer science and and whatnot, and now I think that's the next big space for
everybody
a lot of
wanted to be
students.
graphic artists.
Yeah,
back in the early 2000s, I want to be a graphic artist. Everybody wanted to be a graphic artist, and who it'll be now? Everybody wants to be Taylor Swift, I guess. But not everybody can be Taylor Swift. Well, listen, we are really appreciative of you taking your time today to listen to us, and remember, live today for the tomorrow that's in your heart.
Because you'll never have more time to invest for tomorrow than you do today.
Thank you for listening.
Bread and butter.